Okay, so welcome to the second session of competency mapping, and here we are going to discuss about some of the indicators and categories that could be used to map competency and also go for competency profiling. So, first of all we will discuss about some of the indicators of the competencies, that how do we know that these are the competencies that is required, and what are the various categories of competencies, as I discussed earlier, that we try to identify categories in terms of generic, technical and competence, then we move to managerial competencies and behavioral competencies. So, there could be different kind of competencies, and that is how the competencies have been categorized. So, when we are going to talk about the second session, basically here we will discuss about the competency indicators and the categories of competencies. So, in this session what we are going to discuss is the various indicators and categories. Now, if you look at this is the competency management framework that could be adopted by the organization. Okay. So, we start with the strategic framework, then we move to the competency framework, and then how we go about modeling the competencies at the individual level, group level, at the organization level. Now, if you look at this figure, we start with the strategic framework. Strategic framework means, first of all, when you are going for competency mapping exercise, that you have to identify the strategy of the organization, and when you are going to identify the strategy of the organization, this strategy is coming from where? It is coming from the environment, because based upon your environmental analysis, you are going to identify the kind of a strategy that you are going to use. And this includes what is the vision statements, where you are and where you want to go, how you are going to achieve it, vision, mission, then values, what kind of value systems you are going to find out, what are your strengths and weaknesses. So, you are going to go through a SWOT analysis to identify that, what kind of systems and practices you adopt, what is your ethical values. So, these kind of things is a part of what you call your corporate strategy. So, from this corporate strategy you move down further to your business strategy, which basically helps you to derive your business plans and goals, what kind of culture, people and technology you have. And then from there you move to the next part, that is teamwork. So, what kind of leadership, communication, how you are going to manage conflict, interpersonal relations, projects, if you have self managed teams, how are you going to manage it. Then ultimately this leads to a role strategy, that the strategy related to particular job, that what kind of abilities and skills would be required, what kind of autonomy would be required, the extent to which the people should be autonomy to perform the job, whether they should be allowed to go for multi-skilling. So, you identify that is basically related to job design factors, then you have to see that how you are going to evaluate the performance and how this performance is going to be linked with the reward, right. So, if you look at this strategic framework, that is very, very important, because part of it leads to identifying the kind of competencies that would be required. For example, if you are able to identify your organizational strategy, the overall strategy of the organization, that leads to identify what kind of core competencies would be required at the organizational level, right. So, organization wide core competencies come from the vision, mission, values and strategies. Similarly, we are talking about business specific competencies, that is to be aligned with your business strategy, right. So, when you are talking about achieving goals and objectives, what kind of culture you need, what kind of technology and people have. So, that is related to see that what kind of competencies would be required at the business level, right. And it could vary from one organization to another, another business to one business to another business for the same organization. So, this is what we call that specific business unit specific, right. So, you have to make sure that you identify them as strategic business units. So, each business unit is responsible for its performance and productivity, right. And in order to have better performance, so what kind of competence in terms of culture, technology and people would be required. Then when it comes to identifying team strategies, this leads to further identifying the kind of competencies that would be required by the team. Whether team is able to work together, what kind of communication is there, how they manage conflict within the team, whether the team has the members have all the interpersonal skills to perform their job effectively or not. And then from the team you move to the individual level competencies. So, where you are going to identify the role wise competencies of the individual. So, in terms of his knowledge, skill, attitude, behavior and all kind of things, right. Now, the third part is especially related to what you call the competency modeling. Okay. This modeling framework basically, if you look at this, you will find that yes, when it comes to organizational strategy, okay, you are going to develop those core competencies which is going to help organization to achieve not only its goals and objectives, but it is going to actually further pursue the interests of the shareholders, right, and that helps you to achieve better position in the market, right. So, your profit, productivity, market position, revenue growth, okay, that actually is associated with the kind of competencies that an organization has or it should be linked with, right. Similarly, at the business level again you have to have that you are able to achieve your business specific business targets, people are happy and satisfied. Okay. And similarly, if you are not talking about team competency, you have to see that yes, you have a good team, effective team, okay, and there is a synergy in the team and this team is actually oriented towards profit. Okay. And finally, if the people are competent enough in the role, they would be able to perform well, right. So, they are accomplish their performance and that also helps them to grow them individually and develop themselves, right. So, this competency framework, if you look at this, it talks about competency at 3 levels: strategic level, at the competency framework, and then how this leads to what you call certain goals and objectives for the individual, team as well as organizations, right. Now, moving this, we will look at one of the models of managerial competencies at 3 different levels, right. So, that is nothing else, but if you look at this, you can see 3 things, that is your knowledge part, at the second level your skill part, and third level your attitude or what you call behavior parts, the qualitative aspects, which leads to effectiveness, successfulness of a manager. Now, if you look at this knowledge part, what kind of things you require? Okay? Your knowledge, okay, your sensitivity, your ability to solve problems and these kind of things. At level, if you look at what kind of things are required, your social skills are more important. Okay? How much you are prepared, what is your emotional readiness, your personality and these kind of things. Right. And then third level basically how creative you are, whether you are able to balance your habits, okay, soft skills actually. Okay. So, if you look at this, this is one example especially related to managerial competence. So, it shows that in order to be successful and effective as a manager, you require these things. So, this is the first level, that is the basic level which is must for doing the job. This facilitates and this also facilitates in the process. So, you have to identify competencies at 3 levels and for each one of them then you have to see what is your competencies. Okay. So, what you need to do is that you have to get assessment and feedback, okay, at different levels to identify the competencies, okay, and that is where it is used, like identifying positional requirements in terms of how you are going to process the job and job design and process design, different processes and jobs, because you have to see that it is aligned with the competencies of the people and the groups. Okay. Similarly, it is also related to performance management and development, okay, because based on that you are going to see whether the people are able to manage their performance or not, and what needs to see or to ensure that yes, they are able to move to the higher performance level. So, what kind of development interventions would be required. Okay. So, if a higher level of competencies, okay, it could be used for certain professional activities like going for succession planning or going for HRD interventions to ensure that you develop those competencies. Okay. It is also used for say certain managerial activities related to recruitment, selection, these kind of things, orientation and action. Okay. And the idea here is that when you are going for mapping the competencies, you need to get feedback and assessment from all these things, and so that you can make use of it very effectively. Okay. And that is why you go for assessment and feedback, which is based on competency mapping actually. Now, what are the indicators, especially the behavior indicators, because if you are talking about the technical indicators, you will find that most of them are related or associated with a job, right. For example, if you are a software engineer, so you need certain technical skills, okay, in terms of certain programming languages at the first level. Second level, you require certain skills that how you are going to use them. Third level, you need certain behavioral indicators, and it has been found that behavioral indicators are more important than the two, because that the first two level you have those requisites knowledge and skill which actually without which you cannot perform the job, but behavioral indicators basically helps you to achieve that extra level of high level of performance. So, it is very important to identify the behavioral indicators of competencies. So, you identify those key behaviors which basically enables recognition of competencies at the workplace. Okay. So, and that is where the differentiation is made. Okay. For example, you may have a number of teachers who are going to teach the same thing, but because of this particular competencies, a good teacher might be differentiated from other teachers. So far as knowledge and skill is concerned, some of the teachers might be having might be at the same level, but this could be an enabling factors which is going to differentiate a superior performers from the others. Okay. In terms of his teaching style, not only his knowledge and skill base, because it is more or less same with everybody, right, because everybody gone through the same education process, but it is the skill and the behavior which differentiate a person from others, right. So, that is more important when you are talking about behavioral competencies, because you have to see that what are the behaviors which is demonstrated by people while performing the job. Okay. Because ultimately, when you are going to carry out a competency mapping exercise, you are comparing the performance in order to identify the gap with a person who is performing much better or who is having a superior level of performance. So, when you are going to identify this performance gap, you are comparing it with not the average of poor performers, but you are going to comparing it with superior performers. So, that you are able to identify the gap. So, how you are going to do it? You need to see that what are the behaviors that is exhibited by the excellent performers. So, they could be used as role models, and that could be quantified. So, that you and then you have to reach to that level of behavior in order to have excellent performance, right. So, basically you know that there is again here we are going to follow this 80-20 principle, Pareto's principle, which says that yes, there could be some behavior which are very significant, or they are known as key behaviors. So, maybe the 20% rule that we are going to apply, that 20% which is key behavior, which is going to drive excellent performance or not other things. So, when we are going to identify competencies, you need to identify those behaviors which contribute to significant performance improvement among the people, right. And that is where we are trying to identify competencies at 3 different levels, right. Generic, that is more important, we have talked about it, which requires effective performance, okay. And then you have to see that this is available irrespective of the functional level, right, like having good leadership quality, good communication ability, initiative, listening skills, right. So, these competencies are considered essentials for all employees across jobs or functions, right, and that is why they are known as generic competencies. So, this is the first category of competencies. Second level of competencies are known as managerial competencies. Okay. So, this is required for those who have managerial or supervisory responsibilities, right. It may not be required for all kind of jobs. Then these managerial competencies, after this we have technical or functional competencies, right. So, this functional competencies or technical competencies, we are talking about them. This is basically also considered essential to perform a given job in an organization, which has a defined technical and functional area of work. For example, if you have a software engineer, so you need technical skills in programming in certain languages, right. So, suppose you are concerned with environment management, so you should have functional knowledge or technical expertise that how to manage the environment, or suppose you are a finance professional who are dealing with the finance, then you must have basic technical competence and functional competence, whatever you call it, in order to manage the finances, right. So, that is how we classify into 3 broad categories, that is generic competencies, managerial competencies, and then we have technical competencies, right. Okay. Now, what we are going to discuss here is that why we are going to use this competency approach, not the job analysis approach. What happens in job analysis approach, right. So, what I am going to tell you here is that if you are going to use in the job analysis approach, what we do here is we try to go for job description, and job specification. These are the two things that is done. Job description is nothing else but duties and responsibilities, and job specification is the knowledge and skill that is required in order to perform the job, right. So, you need to match this job description with job specification, okay, and make sure that it is related to the job. It means that if you have this and this, probably you will be able to perform your job effectively, right. So, you, through job analysis process you identify roles and responsibilities associated with the job, and not only roles and responsibility, but you also identify qualification and experience that is required for the job. So, you match these two and see that it helps you to perform your job effectively, right. So, that is what this traditional job analysis approach is, right. Now, when we are going to use this competency approach, it is different. Different in the sense that you try to identify certain characteristics, that is what you call underlying characteristics, which leads to what you call superior performance, not average or effective or standard performance, right. So, how do you identify these characteristics? These characteristics are not identified based on job description process, but you are going to identify these characteristics based on benchmark jobs. Okay. So, you need to identify a job, okay, or an individual, you can say, done by an individual who is a high performer, right. So, you identify the characteristics of a high performing individual, which leads to higher performance or superior performance, right. So, once you are able to identify the characteristics in terms of knowledge and skill and attitude, you identify the gap in the competencies, which is required for superior performance, not effective performance. So, this is the difference between the traditional approach, job analysis approach, and the competency approach to identify the gap. Here this gap is identified for improvement in the performance, so that person is able to achieve what we call an effective performance. And here this gap is identified to achieve what you call superior performance, and that is the difference. Here you adopt the traditional job analysis approach, see what are the roles and responsibilities, what is the qualification, he has it or not, whether there is a gap, the gap is identified, and then you go for training and other kind of activities. Here also you can go for training, but this training is going to different in this, in the sense, because you first you need to identify the characteristics of a superior performance in terms of what you call knowledge, skill and attitude, okay. And then you are going to see a person whose performance is compared with this person in order to identify the gap, not with the standard rules and prescriptions which is used to perform or identify the gap, right. So, these are the differences between the traditional and this competency approach, and then you have to identify what are the behavioral indicators for high performance individuals, right. So, basically you need to identify those competencies based upon outstanding current performance in the organization. That is what I have been trying to emphasize upon. Okay. So, here when you are going to identify the gap in the competencies, you are going to compare it with outstanding performance of individual, and that could be considered as a benchmark for identifying the gap, right. So, it is not related to management theory or an academic idea, okay, which is already prevailing, but you actually have to do it on the job and then see that who is performing very well, and that could be treated as a standard for effective performance, and then your performance is going to be compared with that one, right. Okay. So, it is based on what works within the organization, not outside, and most directly contributes to top performance, right. So, that you can directly relate the high performance and those characteristics with each other, and then you see to it that all the people who are going to work in the organization are having those characteristics so that they can contribute to top performance, right. So, we have talked about some of the competencies okay, for selection, development, management, reward and compensation of the employees. Similarly, you also know that what are the competencies that is required for you to be successful, and then you can evaluate yourself okay, on those criteria, that is generic, technical and functional competencies and managerial competencies, right. So, these managerial competencies and generic competencies there could be an overlap of what you call this behavioral skills as well. So, you know that what are the various competencies that you require in order to be successful in the job. So, when you are going to map a profile competency for a given role for an employee, the idea is that you tell him okay, these are the competencies at this level that is required by you. Okay. So, for example, when I am trying to see and try to apply the competencies, so this you call is the standard performance level, right. So, this is the standard performance level. Now, you have reached to this level. Okay. Now, you move beyond and then you say that this is the outstanding performance level. So, you need a set of competencies here also to perform, and here and then you have to identify the set of competencies that is required to go for outstanding performance, right. And then you have to see that in case of training approach or job analysis approach, as discussed earlier, that you are somewhere here and the gap is identified. So, and this gap is bridged through training and development. In this case, when you are going to use this competency mapping framework, we have to see that though you are performing here at this level, up to what level you have been able to reach to yourself. Suppose you have reached to this level. So, this is the gap. So, this is the gap that is identified. Now, you have to find out this gap that is to be bridged through interventions, because this is required for what you call successful performance, right. So, this gap has to be bridged. So, the employee should be in a position to identify what is the gap in the competencies for superior performance, and then what kind of interventions they can plan or the organization can plan, so that they can have better performance or what you call superior performance or outstanding performance, and that is where you are going to apply these competencies. So, there are different areas where it could be applied, like workforce planning, okay. Especially when you go for manpower planning, you have to see that what kind of people are required by you. So, when it comes to strategic workforce planning, you have to see that yes, you are going to have assessment tools to see whether people have those competencies or not to meet the goals and objectives of the organization, and that is going to decide the quality and quantity of people that you have in the organization. So, that is one area where you can apply it. Moving further, as I told you that these kind of things can also be applied for the selection of the people. So, make sure that you are going to select people who are not going to perform at the standard level, but they are going to perform at a superior level, okay, right. And the selection is going to be based on the competencies which is required for superior performance. Okay. So, when you are going to develop criteria for selection and evaluating resumes, the criteria is not for standard performance, but the criteria is becomes the superior performance, and then you are going to use those characteristics which are leading to superior performance. So, for selection also that can be used, right, and this could be and accordingly you are going to devise your selection process, performance tests to identify the level of competencies people have, right, and accordingly you can go for the entire selection process to identify those who demonstrate competencies which is required for the superior performance, right. So, apart from selection, you are also using in training and development, that is what I told you, that the one way to identify training and development needs is based on the job analysis approach, where you are trying to identify the gap between the standard performance and the actual performance. But if you are using a competency framework, you can still plan for training and development to achieve higher level of performance and see that how people can develop those characteristics which leads to higher level of performance, right. So, even in training and development this could be used. So, you can design a curriculum for training other activities for the development of the employees leading to higher those competencies required for higher level of performance, right. So, you can use some feedback kind of system where you have multi-rater feedback, like you can go for 360-degree feedback to assess the requirements of the employees for the competency development, and accordingly you can do it, right. So, once you have done it, you identify the interventions or the development programs that is to be taken up, build or strengthen each competencies which is required at the individual level for different jobs, or it could be planned at the department level or even the organizational level. Then apart from that, you can also use it for performance management, because performance management is one such area where you need to see that those competencies are there in the people. Okay. So, you can discuss it with the people that okay, what are the competencies that which is going to be compared by the management for you, and then for managing higher performance, because here we are not talking about managing standard performance, right. So, you discuss it with and see that how it can be achieved and how you can relate higher performance and higher competencies, right. So, you accordingly you develop performance management system. So, you go for assessment of the performance, assessment of the competencies, and then you identify the gap in the performance and see what needs to be done, right. Okay. So, you have to see that your performance appraisal systems and other things have these competencies, okay, and the level that is defined for higher performance, and then accordingly you are going to compare people and see whether they have those competencies to perform well or not, right. Apart from that, you can also use it for succession planning. Succession planning actually is where you are going to identify a person to take senior positions on the organization. Okay. So, you are going to identify a successor. So, most probably a successor is going to be someone who is going to perform very well in his given job. So, with the help of this competency mapping exercise, when you are going to identify highly performing individuals, so they could be picked up for succession plan as well. So, and that is where you are going for succession planning also, right. So, in succession planning actually what happens, you have to see that how you are going to assess competencies which is required for the senior position, and those who are performing very well in a given job are high performers, out of them who is going to be selected to take up senior positions, right. Similarly, if you look at this, it is very important that it is also used for reward management, reward and recognition. So, you are going to reward and recognize whom? Those who are very competent, those who are performing very well on the job, right. So, they need to be rewarded and recognized, otherwise you will not be able to manage your talent or develop your talent, right. And this also helps you to reduce your say employee turnover, absenteeism, okay, and it also helps you to increase the motivation level and morale of the employees, because they know that if they are going to perform very well, it would be leading to better recognition and reward by the organization. And that is very important to design a recognition program to identify high value potential people, okay, high value competent people, and then see that how they are going to be satisfied with the kind of recognition or reward program that you are going to have for them. So, make sure that when you are going to have a reward system for them, it must match their competencies, right. So, and they find it worthwhile, otherwise it is not going to motivate them. Okay. So, it is very important to see that how these competency models have been used in various contexts, even for compensation also you can do. You can make a difference in the compensation packages of those who are high performing employees, because they have better competence compared to those who are having standard performance or bad performance, right. So, you will find that it has been used in different say areas, and that is how we have been able to apply this competency framework in different contexts. Thank you very much.